actually have sun. Let's see what things sound like.
More light.
Ah, it's melting! Or something. Okay, cool. Let's roll. Your cell phone's gonna fuck with shit.
That good?
I think it's the cord. That's fine. Just leave it there. We'll see what happens. If we have chirps, you can blame Josh.
Sorry. We also have to navigate to where we're going.
Oh, yeah. We still don't know how to get there, even though we've been
Not
there.
from here.
Oh, 95.
Yes, I'm going 95. But then you have to like cut over in somewhere. Bartlett. We're cutting over in Bartlett. Bartlett to Shortner.
We're not going all the way to Little River?
No. Although I guess we could. Let's just do Little River. That's way easier.
Okay.
Way easier.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, does that cord mess you up?
No, I'm not hearing any chirps right now, so we should be okay. There, I hear chirps, just so the phone's not on top of the mic cord. We're okay.
Oh, I'm getting there. There we go.
Okay, problem solved. Yeah, so another on the road. We kind of went through a dry spell, doing some more now.
Yeah, what's up, everybody?
So, Andrew.
I'm Josh.
We're on the road, on our way to a open house at Cathedral Oaks out in Belton. Belton.
Yeah, Belton.
With one of our favorite venue owners, Lauren.
What's up, Lauren? How you doing?
So, thinking about what I want to talk about, I think we want to cover a couple things, because I know I'm going to see the eclipse, and that's kind of top of mind for me. But we've talking about Meru, so I want to talk about that, and I also want to just
talk about an adventure.
Yeah, we're talking about adventures, and I also want to talk about this is the non sequitur. Anthony Bourdain's not new. It's in like the 9th season show, which is basically No Reservations 2.0, which would be Destination Unknown. Parts unknown. Yeah, whatever. Parts unknown. I just started watching it. I like his snarkiness in general, but it's one of those. It's something you watch in small quantities. And I watched the Houston episode, and I lived in Houston for a decade. If you haven't watched it, it's a great celebration of the things that have made America great, because he basically covers it from the point of view of what you normally hear New York talked about, which is like it's this great international city. One of my favorite things about Houston was it has got some of the best food, bar none, in this country. And I've been a lot of places. But it's got that because it's got so many immigrants that are first, second, third generation. So you can get Vietnamese food from a restaurant where most of the waitstaff doesn't speak English. Or you can get Indian food in a place that most people are speaking Hindi. It was just really good. His closing monologue was pretty spectacular. So I'll probably put that in the blog post just for people to see it. And the link to it on Netflix if you want to go check it out.
Yeah, I think Houston passed New York City as the most diverse city in America. I think 2 years ago, maybe.
It was the first openly gay or lesbian mayor anywhere at any major city in the United States. It has some of the most amazing Indian food. Houston is a weird city because it's got a lot of engineering, oil field, rednecky stuff, but it's got a huge amount of high tech because of the oil field. So there's not so much of the heavy oil field as there is like engineering services and downhole instrumentation at Schlumberger. So you've got a lot of really educated people.
Well, that's a huge shipping port too. So I mean, there's shipping and logistics, and
so you've got a lot of international folks there, but you've also got a ton of really highly educated people. It's not what you expect. And other people, Houston's terrible. And if you drive through Houston's the opposite of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a lovely place to visit. It's a terrible place to live, in my opinion. There are people who like it. Good for them. I hated living there. Houston is a terrible place to visit. It is not a vacation destination.
No.
Unless you're just going to do like a food crawl, and then it might be okay, but put up with traffic. But it's a great place to live because it's such a rich place culturally, and there's so much good food if you're adventurous anyways. I could go to Houston and never eat Tex-Mex and never eat barbecue and never eat hamburgers and sandwiches. And there are good of all those things there. But not eating those, I could eat a different culture's food every single day. I could eat Russian, I could eat Ethiopian, I can eat Vietnamese for days because there's so much Vietnamese food there. Indian food.
I want to say it's the largest concentration of Vietnamese people outside of Vietnam.
outside of Seattle, I believe, has a higher. And the Bay Area used to, but yes, it is one of the big in the U.S.
Yeah.
And actually, the travel Bourdain show, one of the people he talked to, one of his hosts while he was there, were a family of, he talked to a number of people who came from Vietnam after the debacle that was our involvement in the Vietnam War, who were escaping, basically torture and death, that we welcomed with open arms. Maybe not with open arms, we welcomed, who came here with literally like no shoes and no education and couldn't speak English. Or maybe educated, but just couldn't speak English, no property, no money, nothing. And the people he talked to were business owners. They had kids that were lawyers and doctors. And some of the most patriotic people I think I've ever heard talk.
Yeah, they appreciate it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's, for us, it's stasis, right? For the people who have grown up here for generations, it's just the way it is. You don't really have to, your view is never really challenged. Whereas if it's something new to you,
You have no perspective.
think of it like a camera, right? When you get a new lens or a new camera, that's the only thing you put on for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And then it's slowly, you kind of like work it back into the, into the mix. But for a while, like that's all you ever shoot with. So there's that newness and you're exploring it and you're trying to find the limits of it. And so to me, that's always what like, it's always interesting, like the first generation immigration versus like the second generation versus the third. The third is always kind of like the melting pot one.
Yeah, they become fully, they grew up in a fully American culture usually.
Yeah. The second is, their parents were pushing like education. So it's always the most like educated. And then that one for the third is just like, just do what you want. Like, so it's kind of an interesting.
Which is much more like our parents were,
Right.
We'll support you. Just don't be work to accomplish things, but we're not going to, you don't have to be a lawyer to be, to value you. Anyways, it's a good episode. I'll link it.
Man, now I want some like pho or something.
Yeah, I've been craving. I'm going to be back in Houston in a week or two, and I'm probably going to just go get some good food.
So Pflugerville is getting its culture. So there's I live in Pflugerville for those of you who don't know, and we're getting an Ecuadorian restaurant, which I'm kind of interested in. And there's also one of the new ramen places is going to be opening a Pflugerville location as well. So I'm kind of excited about that.
So, I mean, interestingly, so people talk about Austin being kind of a foodie city, and Austin has some great food. It's just interesting to contrast it with Houston too. Not that Austin does not have some authentic ethnic foods, but most of Austin's good food is foodie, what I would call foodie, which is maybe people from those cultures, maybe not, taking the food, making fusions of it.
It's usually upscale too.
It's upscale. And Houston, there is that element.
It's just what people eat.
It's just what people eat. So if we go to Bombay Sweets, our wife's favorite restaurant, vegetarian Indian, South Indian. It is, and they support no garlic, no onion, because there's a religious sect that doesn't eat garlic or onion in India, which my wife has a garlic allergy, so that's nice for us. But you walk in there, it's cheap. It's a dive. It's not pretty. It's not upscale at all. But it's almost exclusively Indians. Like, you'll be the only white person in there. Or maybe a couple. It's definitely a local restaurant for the Indian population in Houston, not catering towards white people who want to go eat, or Americans, whatever the color of their skin is, who want to go have other cultures' food. Same with the Vietnamese food. There are definitely the upscale places that cater to anybody, Americans, that are accessible. But we used to go to Sing Sing out near Highway 8.
Not the prison, right?
No, not the prison.
Okay.
And it's the kind of restaurant where there are people ordering, most of the people ordering, have food that you don't see on the menu because the English language menu doesn't have everything on it.
Yeah.
And there probably isn't a Vietnamese language menu. They just go in and they order what they want. And it's because it's very traditional, so they do, you can pick out your fish. It's that kind of restaurant. Anyways.
I love going into restaurants where people look at me like I shouldn't be there. Like, what's this white boy doing here?
But
how does he know? Like, how does he know about that?
I've never had that experience in Houston. Like, I've never really. I think they're used enough. There's enough.
Yeah.
It's not like being in a country where there is like you're the anomaly, which I have been. in Thailand, there were places we went. Most of the places we went were frequented by tourists, but we went a couple places where there weren't many tourists, and so there was. And I'm also abnormally large compared to most Thai people, so we got some stares. Anyway, so speaking of travel,
Yeah.
Meru.
So for those of you who haven't seen Meru, it's a gripping adventure documentary about a group of 3 people that tried to climb a new route up the shark's fin in the Himalayas.
So before we go any farther, I'm just gonna say, if you haven't seen it and you care about cliffhanger, which honestly you can watch it knowing the ending and it's still amazing, go watch it. There'll still be spoilers in this, but if you don't care, they try to climb it and there's a failure and a success. And numerous people had tried to climb it before, and so it goes into climber culture. But Jimmy Chin, who is a world-renowned adventure photographer and videographer, was one of the people who went to climb it. So him and his climbing mentor, whose name escapes me at this moment, it's been a while since I watched it, go to climb it. And his climbing mentor is a climber. That's what he does. He's a hardcore alpine climber. So they're doing this multi-day trek where they have to carry all their food, all their fuel to melt snow, to have water, up. It's like 10,000 foot of climb from their base camp. Like it was, maybe their base camp was like 12 or 15,000 feet, and the peak's at only like 21,000 feet.
Yeah, that's about
But
right.
it's never been successfully climbed. Most people have tried. And they ended up, the video chronicles their first attempt where they failed. And how close they got to
Which
disaster.
I will say what I say when I see any of those adventure documentaries like this. There was some person, and it was the 3 of them, there was some person carrying all the cameras, camera batteries, memory cards. So think about what you pack on like a normal shoot and then go vertical 20,000 feet with it.
And shoot video for a documentary film.
Right.
Like not a little bit of video.
Right.
Like you're gonna have to shoot a lot.
Yes.
So they talk about that. So the way that kind of alpine climbing is done.
Weight is very important.
Yeah,
right?
they're climbing a vertical wall for 1,000 feet. And they're sleeping on the vertical wall. So, but they're literally there's 100 pounds-ish, maybe a little bit more gear per person in the crew. So the lead climber climbs, and then they hoist some of the gear up, and the next guy climbs, and they hoist some more of the gear up, and the final guy climbs. So they're literally having to like leapfrog up the mountain with all this gear to have all the gear. But then you add to that, so Jimmy and Renan also, who is the third person, who's the most junior of the 3, was helping film, and Jimmy filmed. There's plenty of times when I'm like, what at this point did you think, I'm gonna get a camera out?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, hanging off a wall, literally over nothing, because it's a sheer vertical wall. Not almost sheer, but sheer. Like, if you fall, you're not gonna touch anything for a long time. And you know, the lead climber's above you. The person doing the lead is not going to be filming because they're fully occupied because there's no line above them. They're having to put in pitons. And, you know, filming the ice coming down and hitting them.
Yeah, I mean, the commitment to filming
Yeah.
is amazing.
So in the second one, their portage tent broke.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about that. You're hanging from a cliff, and the thing you're sleeping on collapses. And your first instinct is, I'm gonna get my video camera out.
Right.
Because, I mean, honestly, it probably doesn't matter because if you were gonna die, you'd already be dead. You know, you'd be in free fall. But, so they have footage as they untangle themselves from the tent and clip in to try to figure out how to fix the portage tent, which is their shelter on the side of this mountain for their week-long climb. Who thinks, let me get my camera out?
Yeah, no, it's so. Years ago, there was IMAX Himalayas, and it was or IMAX Everest. Has anybody picked up an IMAX camera? Do you know how heavy an IMAX camera is?
I've seen people film underwater with them, and you have like 4 people, 2 as swim propulsion vehicles for it, and then like 2 operators running it.
I want to say, I could be wrong with this.
It's like the Volkswagen.
I want to say like the lightest IMAX camera they have is like 70-something pounds.
Yeah, now they're probably smaller. Forever they were like the size of a Volkswagen. Like they were just ridiculous. Like you need a dab it to put it in the water.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So, I remember watching the film, and at the time, you know, I'd been studying film for a while, And there's this guy, talking on screen, la 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 la. I'm like, yeah, that's the easy part. There's 2 or 3 crew whose entire job is to Sherpa heavy equipment up to get to that point.
Probably more than that.
I mean, yeah, there probably was 10 or 20.
Well, the thing with Everest, so I mean, the Meru
is a technical climb.
Well, and it's
that had never been done.
Right, and so Everest is, it's the Everest of. They use that as an expression to say it's the ultimate, but you can just pay to go to Everest.
Right.
And Sherpas carry your gear, and you have a personal climbing guide, and there's a route. There's multiple routes. So
I always heard K2 was the hard one, which is kind of the sister.
Yeah, but the point is they've been climbed a lot, and so there's established routes, and they're. So I always like, and they always say that the Andrea Doria is the Everest of diving, and it is. It's the same thing. You can pay to go there. I know people who do cave exploration, and they almost I don't know any of them that carry cameras because the exploration phase is not when you.
Yeah.
So these people were literally doing exploration. They didn't know how to get to the top. They're carrying a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it was, but so the most amazing part about this video is actually not the climb of Meru.
It's the recovery.
No, it's the most terrible week you could possibly have as a professional.
Yeah.
Renan is helping film with Anthony. Jimmy. Why did I say Anthony? With Jimmy. They were doing a commercial shoot for snowboarding, and they do. So he's known for his ski footage and video because he's a world-class, backcountry skier. And Renan was relatively new at it, but was good enough to do it. So he went to film. He had a major fall, smashed his helmet open, and they didn't know if he was going to survive or walk or anything ever again. So of course, Jimmy's the person who hired him, and he's pretty torn up about it. But he chooses to be not that you have to keep going if you're a pro, but he's a pro, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go back out. I'm gonna finish this shoot because I committed to do it. He was caught in a major avalanche, like immediately,
like the next day, or like 2 days later.
An avalanche, and you don't survive avalanches. Most people who are caught in an avalanche die. Even if you do everything right, you don't survive a big avalanche. And he was swept a long way down the mountain, and just happened to come out buried waist deep.
Is Jimmy Chin actually Archer?
He might be Archer, but not an asshole. Woo! Yeah. And they have somebody we talk about filming at weird times. Jimmy got footage of Renan in the ambulance and the airlift and all that stuff, and goes to the hospital. So he has a very big commitment in his mind to filming.
Mm-hmm.
I think somebody had a camera with him during his avalanche experience, or his camera somehow was still in his pack or whatever, because they filmed him sitting on the snow, shaking, all bloody.
They were interviewing him 5 minutes after it all happened.
And I'd be willing to bet he said, "Get a camera out, you gotta interview me," which is awesome.
For him, the quality that I take away from him, it was just that singular focus of this is what I set out to do, and I'm gonna put every ounce of energy, effort, planning.
How often do I get to shoot somebody who's been in an avalanche? I was just in an avalanche.
Just amazingly committed to whatever he set out to do.
All in. He's
in.
Very obviously 100% all in.
And just that removal of everything that isn't needed, and going forward with all your weight and effort for what is needed.
The great photojournalists, especially the war photojournalists, do the same thing. People are like, well, how can you stand by and watch as...
Yeah.
And a lot of times the story is, if there's something they can do, they don't stand by and watch. They actually go try to help because they're humans and they have empathy. They don't think everyone in the world is out to get them and they hate them. But at every moment they're thinking, how can I tell this story? And frankly, most people who are photojournalists have an agenda, however much they want to say they're non-biased. They want to tell a story that tells you what they are experiencing. And a lot of times that comes down to people are being killed needlessly, or there's a lot of suffering here that we should try to do something about, or the enemy is terrible and our resolve should not waver, right? You know, one of the greatest wartime photojournalist photos ever, the Marines on Iwo Jima, right? That tells a story, and it's advocating a point of view.
Oh, and it becomes more than just a story. It becomes. They become icons. You know, the photos that have that meaning, they become even more than just that. You know.
Well, and I'm ashamed I can't remember what was the person's name who took that.
I don't know the person who took that one.
I want to say Kappa, but I don't think it was Kappa.
No, that one wasn't Kappa. I don't think he was.
It was one of the famous World War II. But the thing about that is, that was one of the bloodiest fights in World War II for the Americans. We lost so many Marines. And this photojournalist was going up the hill with them, right? So that's, like, they're all in on telling a story, though.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I guess my question is, like, you know, to the people listening, you know, what have you gone all in on? You know, what are you fully committed to the things you're doing, or are you just kind of tiptoeing? Because to me, I found that, you know, when I've tiptoed, I don't really get very good results. But when I fully commit, I may not get good results, but at least I'll get a good story out of it.
Yeah, there's another aspect there too. I mean, yes, I know every time I've halfway done something, it's because I wasn't that interested in it, so I've learned not to halfway do stuff. Mm-hmm. That's why I don't write software for a profession anymore, because I'm not that interested and I halfway do it and it's never that good. But when you go all in on something, you're really taking a risk, and I don't mean the risk of dying on the side of a mountain. It can be something perfectly safe. You're taking a personal ego and emotional risk, mm-hmm. because going all in means people are going to know you're doing it, right? So we try with our weddings, for example. Like, I'm just working on our website to try to make it better, to be a better expression of what we like to do. And one of the phrases is, we don't know how to do anything halfway. And I think that's true. Like, that's not a platitude. People who've worked with us will understand that. We if we want to do something, we go do it. We don't halfway do it. We don't sleep for 40 hours because we're driving between locations, and we have 10 cameras out, and, you know, we convince couples to go out in the middle of the night to, you know,
so talking about
parts.
I told you this shit. So last night we were shooting, you know, it was a reception. It was a wedding reception for a destination wedding. And so it was at, like, a nice indoor place, but it was a bar kind of place. But they had a mechanical bull. And it was toward the end of the night, and the couple of drinkers like, hey, you know what we really need to do? I'm like, no. I was like, I need to get y'all with your drinks in hand on the mechanical bull. They're like, no, I don't. I'm like, no, I already talked to your mom. She said she thought it'd be a funny idea. She really wants you to do it. Okay. So by the time we got the couple, we had a crowd of about 35 people around us with a couple on the mechanical on the same time with their drinks in hand. And I didn't have to do that. It wasn't part of what they asked me to do, but it just seemed like a fun idea to try to convince. And the photos, I know it's going to be their favorites from the night, because everything else just people standing around, you know, hanging out, having a good time, getting candids. But then to take it that next and be like, no, here's what we're going to do.
But it was contagious also, because you had people around who thought it was a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing about this is, if you're going to, you can't do too many things and do them well, right? You can't go all in on more than one or two things in your life. And so, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of this, right? Like, I have 4,000 hobbies. Mm-hmm. And I like that, and I will continue to have all those hobbies, but I also know which ones are important. You know, photography is the thing I do right now. It's my identity. And the other stuff actually is usually executed in support of photography. So woodworking, well, I'm getting ready to build a polar mount for the eclipse. An equatorial mount, I guess is what they're technically called, for the eclipse. To do tracking shots of the sun. Oh, perfect. And that's, you know, some woodworking engineering, but it's in service of photography. Mm-hmm. I haven't been a diver for a while because I couldn't devote. You can't really be a cave diver halfway. Right? That's a good way to get killed. So I haven't done it, but I'm getting ready to get back into it, and the technical diving stuff. And I realize that's going to take. It's going to be related to photography, but those two are going to be kind of the things I'm going to have to focus on. I haven't dealt with my race car, in a long time, because I just don't have the mental energy. I can't do what you have to do to have the kind of car I have and use it if there's any other distractions. So I think it's really important if you always feel like you're halfway doing stuff, do less things.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's kind of the dangerous side of, in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, there's become this notion of like, oh, you have your job and then you have your like side gig or side hustle or, something else. I'm like, man, that just means you're not doing your actual job very well. It can be done, and there's certainly reasons to do it.
I did it for a while.
No.
I can tell you, I didn't do a good job.
But you're sacrificing something along the way. And
you only have so much mental energy to give.
And as long as you know what that exchange is, that's fine. But I think there's this lure of like, oh, well, do your full-time job, do your side hustle job. It's like, are you really committed to either, right? I mean, I just think it's a dangerous.
So there's an element to that.
There can be a benefit, but it's also a dangerous.
The element to that is that we think of time as the resource that matters. Yeah. Well, I'm not doing it during work time, and this is why employers try to get you to agree not to have anything else. Something I disagree with. That's a whole different story. But the reason they do that is because you have limited mental energy. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about anything woo. Like, there's only so much intense concentration you can muster during a given time period, during a week, a day. And I know I find this myself. Like, I work probably 12 hours a day on average on things. And I have to be really careful not to try to work on complicated things when I know I'm getting exhausted. Which means if your day gig is, I don't know, webmaster somewhere, you have to pay attention, and you come home and you're trying to write software, you got to realize that don't expect to be superhuman. That's really the key.
Yeah.
And frankly, there used to be a time, and there are people who their job is their identity. It's who they are. We know some people like that. I mean, I guess technically we're that way now. We just own the own company.
I was like, we're pretty much the same.
But I wasn't that way at the end of my software career. And I don't think you were that way when you were working at the end of your career, right? It was an economic necessity required to pay the bills.
Yeah. Yeah, my identity was not being a business analyst.
And in a world of pseudo-finite resources, which is what we live in, it's not a limit, single pie and everybody gets a smaller slice if we divide it up. That's a different argument. But, right, it'd be nice if we could all do the thing we wanted. But as they said in Office Space, well, nobody would clean shit up because nobody wants to be a janitor, right?
Yeah.
But as those type of tasks that nobody wants to do get more and more automated, we have more and more freedom. Certainly you have a lot more choices if you have the right education and skill set in the technical world, which involves not a lot of physical exertion. So if your hobbies and your passions are to go out and climb mountains or go diving, hang glider.
That is a hang glider. I was trying to figure out what that was.
It's a hang glider.
Yeah. Okay.
Then you can essentially double up because you're not getting the physical exertion at work, and so that energy is available. And it's just an interesting. We have an energy budget in all these different dimensions.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny. So many jobs now, we have to schedule that physical. When I was working a desk job, I ran marathons. Well, now my job, I'm on my feet a whole lot more, and I'm moving around, and I don't feel the need to go run marathons anymore for lots of reasons.
That's just one of them.
That's one of them. But I always think like, what would a farmer think about a Gold's Gym?
Well, it's like, why the people who, there's a perception, right? You'd come home, you'd have a beer, you'd watch some football. And if your job was digging a ditch or putting in a road or like that type of off time makes perfect sense. Yeah. It also explains why a lot of our culture, your off time is, I'm going to have an intramural sports league, or I'm going to have, I'm going to go do a play, or I'm going to go do. It's a need that used to be filled by the job, and some people still have that, which is why there's such a difference between, like, people make fun of, like, they've made fun of every generation, but they make fun of millennials now. Oh, well, you go do all these fancy new plays, you play whatever. Well, if their job is to basically update a spreadsheet every day, they aren't getting any physical activity. It makes perfect sense that their hobby is.
Yeah. I
like to do something active.
Yeah, I mean, like my dad, he's been doing train wrecks for 50-something years. He's never been to a gym in his life and would laugh at the notion of it.
I mean, I think it's kind of silly we live in a society that we need gyms, but...
Well, but, he doesn't... He can change a tire without tools. Like, he's just we always called it country strong. You get those guys that were farmers or construction workers, and they just did strong stuff all day, and it's solely, For me, I carry a camera around, and it's kind of silly at
I'm
times.
not a blacksmith. I don't have the muscles of a blacksmith.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you don't see any blacksmith going to, like, the chest press. Like, they do it all day. So, I mean, it's just different. We have needs, right? We have physical, mental, spiritual, and so we have to, like, everything has become more discrete units instead of integrated. So to me, it's kind of interesting how that plays out. What are we looking at?
I was trying to see where to turn.
It's up here.
You know it? Okay.
Yeah, it's the next stop.
Let you do it.
Yeah, so that's why you see people taking pictures on the side of Meru, because it's a thing to do.
Yeah, going back to that, right? So, like, I don't know. I'm not inside his head. I'd love to sit down and talk to him about it. But, right, was he climbing Meru to film it, or was he filming it because he wanted to climb it? Or was it one of these, like, the perfect marriage of the two? Right?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, would he have climbed it without the camera? I know. For me,
does anybody do anything without a camera these days?
Well, that, yeah. I mean, but I mean, for me, like, the camera ends up being my motivation a lot of times to go places or to push farther and to do things beyond, because I'm hoping to see something I can make a good photograph with.
Yeah, the camera as a passport.
As a hiker, right? I'm kind of an indifferent hiker. I enjoy hiking. I like being out in nature. But there are times when I'll hike twice as far because I know I want a certain photo.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I was just doing it for the pleasure of hiking and being out in nature, I would go much slower. I wouldn't go as far. I wouldn't be up as early. Like, it's a different goal. I don't know. It's just an interesting question. The person he climbed with, Conrad was his last name. I can't remember his first name. Or maybe, no, Conrad was his first name. Anyways, doesn't matter. Like, he was just a climber. He was not a photographer. I think most of the alpine climbers are probably just climbers at that level because of the technical skills involved. Anyways, I don't know. So we're going. I mean, what do we got coming up here? I know I got some classes coming up.
Yeah, we have some fun classes coming up. We just wrapped up a architectural photography class,
which I would say was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to teaching that one again. There's a couple more slides I want to add.
Get the blog post done before I edit this.
Okay, I'll get the blog post. There'll be a blog post talking about it somewhere.
Yeah, it'll be in the description of the blog.
And then I'm developing a food photography class. We're going to be doing an intro and an intermediate. And so that's fun. I always like preparing for the classes because it makes me go out and shoot more of whatever we're preparing. Kind of gives me something to focus on. So I'm really kind of excited about the food one. I think we have one coming up in July.
I think there's one in July, yeah.
Yeah, I think July 10th. Somewhere.
The classes are now listed all on AzulOx workshops.
Oh, if it comes out before July 6th, we're going to be doing mermaids again this summer. We haven't done them in...
This will be out pretty quick.
Well, we haven't done them in about 2 years, so this will, if you want to do mermaids with us, that'll be a good time.
Woohoo!
Ooh, mermaids. Or any crazy underwater cosplay, whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be mermaids. If you want to be Superwoman or something, that's fine too. Wonder Woman. Yeah, so I've got another Milky Way class coming up on the 23rd, I believe, of June. Which I think maybe sold out or has one spot left in it.
Is it Milky Way or light painting?
Sorry, no, Star Trails.
Star Trails.
In June 23rd.
Yeah.
Which, if it isn't sold out, only has one spot left. I keep getting emails from Precision asking me if I'll go up to X spots. So we're pretty close to full. And then Milky Way had 1 or 2 spots left last time I checked, which was a week ago. It's in July. I'm only doing 1. So if you want to do it, I would advise you to grab that spot. But speaking of, you talked about causes you to do things when you learn classes. So I'm preparing to do the eclipse photography, and I'm working on a blog post which is turning into like a 3,000 word post, which is huge.
That's how my
And I've never photographed an eclipse before. I've never seen a total eclipse. I've seen partial eclipses. And that's an amazingly common thing, because a total eclipse, and if you don't know the difference between a total, an annular, and a partial eclipse, the quick rundown is most eclipses are partial, because the shadow of the actual moon never passes over you. You just get the side where it's only partially eclipsing it. Angular is what we get most of the time, which is the moon, when it's at its farthest point in its orbit, it's slightly smaller than the sun in the sky, and so it never covers the entire photosphere, so you still have direct sunlight coming around the moon. This is a total eclipse, which means the moon's at its closest approach to Earth, which is where you get people going, ooh, supermoon at full moon. Well, this is at new moon, and the alignment is right. And so the eclipse is going to pass over the center part of the U.S. all the way from coast to coast. The totality can be seen for about a 100-mile wide swath. You want to be near the center of that. 100-kilometer wide swath, excuse me. That goes from the east coast to the west coast, or west coast to the east coast, actually. Goes the opposite direction you would expect. You'll have about 2.5 minutes of totality, where the moon is big enough that it covers the entire photosphere. So you can see the corona, which we normally can't see because it's about 20 stops dimmer than the photosphere, which is what we think of as the sun. Anyways, I've been kind of doing a deep dive into planning for making photos of it. I was just telling Josh before we started this, I'm taking all the cameras because I have a bunch of different things I want to try, and this is literally a once-in-a-lifetime thing unless you're willing to travel internationally to find these eclipses. And then it might be a once-every-decade thing where you can get a total eclipse on land where you don't have to be in a plane to see it. So anyways, I'm working on that blog post. Like, you talk about learning while you teach.
Yeah.
It's helped me to try to explain it in the blog post to understand the concepts better, because this is my first one, but there's a lot of material out there, so I'm trying to integrate all that material, understand it, and then put it back out in a way that I think people who aren't quite as science nerdy, NASA, astronomy as I am will be able to comprehend it and get some use out of it for, okay, I want to photograph the eclipse, but I got one shot and there's no trial run. Anyway, so I'm doing that. So beyond Milky Way and Star Trail class, we've got, I've got a new class coming up. I don't remember the dates, but coming up in August, I think. Adobe Free Workflow, although I don't think that's the name we went with something else. I'm going to be doing a Capture One workflow class where I basically take you on a tour of Capture One and show you how to process raw files and manage a basic workflow, show you some of the cool features. And then Affinity Photo, which is what I use instead of Photoshop. Don't like Photoshop for lots of reasons. Affinity, if you're always looking at Photoshop and you just want to like throw your keyboard across the room because it's so impossible to understand, Affinity is a really good choice. It's affordable. We're going to be going through that, showing you how to do all the main things you'll want to do in a pixel editor, skin retouching, compositing, even things like raw processing if you don't want to do raw processing in something like Capture One. So check that out. That's Super Precision. You can find it on AzulOxWorkshops.com as well. And we've got like 20 subscribers, so you know we're not really a big channel. But if you like what we're doing, or if you don't, but you just think we're kind of amusing and you want to, make our egos a little bigger, click the subscribe button somewhere.
Tell your friends.
Make fun of us, whatever. we don't care why you subscribe, just so you subscribe. Anyways, so we're getting close to Belton for our open house, so I think we'll call that one quits.
All right, sounds good, y'all. I'm Josh.
Andrew.
We're on the road.
The camera's been slowly tilting. That's kind of amusing. Bye.